look great. I love the shades.
You know what? In honor of Dion. In
Yes,
honor of Dion.
yes, yes. So like I'm super excited about today's episode because, obviously we've been talking about, obviously in the media, we've been seeing like a lot of racial discrimination lawsuits with the NFL, also corporate media, when it comes to hiring and firing. And we're also seeing a lot of, you know, controversial topics just in the football landscape and in the sports landscape in general. So, like when it comes to certain lawsuits, I know that the most recent one is like the Jim Trotter situation with the Buffalo Bills owners. He's carrying out the lawsuit. He's holding Goodell, and he's holding them accountable. And I think it's really important that he does that because over the years, we've seen really we've seen a glimpse of the NFL that makes us question if they really care about Black people. I mean, if they really, take into consideration how we feel, and then what we're contributing to the organization and the corporate side itself. I mean, there are a lot of us behind the scenes now as owners in the NFL and the sports industry, and then also in the media. And lately in the media, not only is that lawsuit trending, and it's a huge eye opener to what still needs to be worked on, but somebody like Shannon Sharpe, for example, he is going in on his platform, Club Shay Shay. And I don't blame him, especially with the recent situation that he had with Undisputed and with Fox Network. I've heard that Fox Network, they don't care for Black people and stuff like that. Obviously, some of them are still employed there, but there's still that negative connotation attached to them. And how could they get rid of that? And how then, if they can't get rid of that, how can they acknowledge that? How can they change that? So I'm excited for us to get into this because Shannon Sharpe is somebody who has always been vocal and, making waves. He's been that representation that we needed to see, from back in the day. Of course, he transitioned from the NFL, then he worked at CBS for 10 years. But he knew that he could talk more. I mean, not just play on the field, but he could talk sports, not just football, but other stuff too. So now it's like, you know, how can we change the narrative? How could we represent us the best way that we can? That's by creating our own platforms, and that's what we can do. Now, these
Yeah.
networks are partnering with these platforms. You know
Yes.
what I'm saying? So there is still that connection there, but then you have platforms like Revolt TV. They are really stepping up and making those connections, making sure that we have these platforms that we can utilize as being a high profile athlete, a Black journalist who covers sports. So it's not just about, these certain people. There's just a bigger picture to it. And it's a huge topic that needs to be discussed. I know that you were telling me about Stage Still, right? Her whole thing was freedom of speech. I know Cari Champion recently went on, not too recently, but she went on the I Am Athlete podcast, which is another prime example of, athletes making waves,
Yeah.
taking the initiative to really use their platform as a high profile athlete. I Am Athlete has had major success, and it's opened up a lot of doors for other athletes as well to go ahead and follow in their footsteps. So what she said on there was like she didn't really feel appreciated by ESPN. We also know that when the pandemic happened, Allison Williams didn't feel comfortable with the COVID-19 vaccine mandate and stuff like that, and they didn't respect her wishes when it came to that as far as her religion. And then, of course, Jemele Hill, that's somebody who I definitely looked up to when, I was at Ohio State and still looked up to this day. But she had a voicemail that was racist. And that was from somebody in corporate media, you know, making threats and stuff like that. That stuff really happened. And for the media to try to make it seem like they don't do such nasty things, it's absurd. What's your take on it?
It's almost like, what is it gonna take for
Mhm.
change to happen?
Right,
How long is this going to go?
right,
Everyone knows what's going on in terms of the media not necessarily appreciating Black voices, Black narratives, Black stories, Black journalists, reporters, Black anything. You
right.
know, so it's like, at what cost, at what point will things change in corporate media?
Mhm.
There really isn't much to say other than their racism is very heavy in the
Mhm.
media,
Yeah,
and it starts from top down.
yeah.
I'm not even sure if viewers and readers and fans even realize that there are some stories that aren't even allowed to get the go ahead.
Right.
Even in terms of how stories are even produced, things shift and change so much from when the author or the writer or
Mhm.
the creator of that story versus
Mhm.
it being published. There's so many rounds that it goes through.
Right.
Um, but that's where that's where the problem occurs. It's almost
Mhm.
like the game telephone, You start off with one phrase, and then by the end, it was something completely different,
Right.
you
You
know?
didn't write
And,
that. Right. I
and
didn't
that
write that. Yeah.
exactly. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that there is that there are not enough Black people in these corporate spaces. There are not enough people of color in these corporate media spaces. But at the same time, they don't want it. They don't want to really make the change, which is why people like Shannon Sharpe go off and create their own big platforms.
Right.
And even the I'm an athlete, that's huge because we've been told time and time again that, athletes should just shut up and play ball.
Yeah.
But I think people fail to realize that athletes are more than just athletes,
Yes.
just like a mom is more than a mom and a teacher is more than a teacher. We have so many roles in life that we fulfill. And it's absurd that athletes are expected to just shut up, especially about situations, topics, and causes that affect them firsthand.
Yeah. And like
It's
when it comes to, working in these in the corporate media, right? Say like you're in the newsroom, right? Yes, there is somebody who's going to go over what you write, and if they don't like it, then it's not going to get aired in the way that you said it. You're trying to help change the narrative, but they don't see that. They don't understand that from your perspective. They may sense it, but they don't really want to, like you said, they don't really want to change,
Mhm.
So it is up to us to just keep the ball rolling, keep calling out people on their shit. Okay. Keep calling out people when it comes to the racist remarks. Okay. The underlying discriminatory hiring practices, when it comes to coaches and things of that nature. That treatment there is, I mean, it's overlooked, but it's not. And then when the lawsuit comes out, and it seems like they try to hide stuff, you know what I'm
Yep.
saying?
Yep.
Like you can't run ads and you can't, run promotions and commercials saying that you're supportive of Black Lives Matter or you're supportive of anything that's attached to the Black community, and then you don't really follow up with it with the actions. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people are saying like it's still like that slave mentality when it comes to the NFL owners. You know what I'm saying?
Very
And unfortunately, some of the players they go in knowing these things, and I just wonder like, what are you? I mean, I know you want to play in the NFL, but you know that you don't have to make a lucrative income just by playing in the NFL. There are other positions. And in order for us to make the changes that we want, we need to be in those types of positions. Like Jim
right.
Trotter said, we need to be at the decision table when it comes to making decisions about our athletes, when it comes to making decisions about Black athletes. I mean, you can't be that dismissive. Unfortunately, they have the power to do so, but I feel like all of that is going to be changing really soon. Um,
Very soon.
yeah, I think it's going to be changing really soon to the point where I don't know about us having our own league, like Jerry Jones said, but I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. I know that Jay-Z told Colin Kaepernick to like stop kneeling, like he made his point, but like
The
it's
fight never stops.
yeah, like it doesn't stop, and it sucks that he's kind of been blackballed in a way. Of course, he had deals outside of the sport of football, telling his story, the Netflix deal and his book and things of that nature. But that he wants to play football. That's what he's passionate about. And I know people are more concerned about his performance, but a lot of people are just like, oh no, we don't even want him because of the Black Lives Matter thing. And that's just ridiculous. I mean, I know it's a social issue, but that's what this platform is for. We are allowed to talk about social issues. Athletes are allowed to voice how they feel about something that happens in the news that affects them, either
Right.
historically or not. You don't have to have a direct connection, but if you can resonate with the story, then why not talk about it? That's why I'm
And it is,
so glad, athletes do have these platforms. Cam Newton, Brandon Marshall, Ocho Cinco. I see he joined Shannon Sharpe and stuff like that. So those things are really good because that's what we need. But at the same time, unfortunately, the lawsuits are proof that the NFL is so racist. I mean, period. You can't say that they're not sometimes using the N word in the privacy of their own home. We know that some people are. We know that you still. I mean, people even. I know some of the theories can be a little extreme, but I've even heard like the jerseys, like the numbers represent, like they just look at them as a number. Like
yeah.
there's a name attached to it, but the number, is just like a number, just like in prison, like
Mhm.
you're just a number and you're not a human. It's really sad, and it's gonna take people like us to really infiltrate that NFL racism system. Like it's sad because there's a lot of us in the NFL. We make up 70% of the NFL. And then think about behind the scenes. So
And I think people don't realize the importance of diversity in executive and leadership positions.
mhm,
It's everything's easier said than done
yeah.
in terms of people expect 70% of the NFL being black being enough. They think that's the type of representation that is enough, to kind of keep black people and people of color quiet. But again, I think people fail to realize that the changes start at the executive positions. But when you don't have that diversity or those other voices pushing for change,
Mhm.
change won't happen, it won't come, and there's a couple things. One, it's absurd how athletes are really sheltered from really sharing how they truly feel. It's
Mhm.
it's quite honest, crazy how, they're really stripped of the First Amendment right. It even makes me think of how, you know, you half the country was upset when Donald Trump was banned from Twitter, half the country wasn't.
Mhm.
But, I use that analogy to say that, you know, freedom of speech, here in the NFL, it's really being stripped and taken away. Even in the NBA, James Harden was fined $100,000 for his statements about a general manager, and it's just and the statements that he made, you know, they weren't anything out, they weren't as nearly as crazy as some of the racist statements that we've heard coming from the NFL.
Right. Why they not getting fined? Oh, because they're
Right,
not a player. I know
right,
Adam Silver, he just enforced a new rule when it comes to the fines in the NBA. And
right,
he thinks he's slick. He's also like really against Ice Cube and his Big Three league. Like it's like they just don't. They want to just leave us right where they can have
right.
control over us, right? Just
Control.
put their
Exactly.
thumb just right there. And
Exactly.
that's not
Exactly.
how it's gonna be for the next
It's,
10
it's
years.
it's dangerous though, to really know. I think, on a grand scale, people see these big players, they see their lives, the lavish lives, the luxury lives, and they really skip over the fact that, for some, it almost feels like sometimes maybe being in a prison,
Yeah.
into like, you're giving this, in replace of having this. Or it's like, you give, it's like you're given this right, you
Mhm.
know, for having this right taken away from you. And
Right.
so, what good, is that balance? So it's unfortunate, but again, I think it will start with society, and with the encouragement, the uplifting voices from those coming out from the street.
Right. Right. And just imagine, like for instance, what Deion Sanders is doing with college football, somebody can do that, have that same impact in the NFL. We have the capability to do that. We have the resources to do that. We have the education to do that. And I think it's possible. It's just going to take that one person to really enforce that, be on our side. Unfortunately, I don't think that's Rodger Goodell. I don't think that's people who are like Jerry Jones. I don't think that's people like Terry Pegula. These are people who have constantly been accused of making racial slurs and things of that nature. So yes, it is unfortunate that basically in corporate media, it's definitely like, don't ask questions. I mean, ask questions, but don't ask certain types of questions. Just be happy that you're here, and that's not cool. I mean, that's absurd. We've come so far, and it's just, we're not just going to be like what you call a lot of people call it the poster child, just for the face of the company. So, I mean, athletes just really need to be careful about what organizations they're choosing to go with. They really do need to do the research to see, some racism is going to exist. So maybe, I don't know, maybe some of these athletes feel like they're going to make that change. They want to do it off on their own, like on their own platform, not so much within the NFL, because that's a huge task and a huge challenge to take on, But yeah, it's something that we need to constantly be talking about and calling them out on, because people know and people want to hear, what can be done, what should we do, so
Right.
it's best that we keep talking about stuff like this and sexuality. Like, I know I sent you what Dwayne Wade, right? Or I don't know if you sent it to me, but his post that he made on IG about him attending the Clinton Global Community event to speak about defending and advancing LGBTQ rights. Of course, he's doing that to back up his child, and a lot of people are now realizing that's really the root of this. That's the cause, is that he's supporting his child that he helped make. Right? It doesn't matter if the child is identifying as this or that. It's his child. He loves his child, and he's letting them know that you have to do this in order to stand up for what you want. There's a bigger picture, but I feel like people in the Black community, they say the most homophobic things to Dwayne Wade. I mean, this man has left Miami. He's no longer here. You know what I'm saying? And I know that that was part of it, that played a role, especially his child, the hate that he would receive. Florida definitely was just under a whole scrutinized situation from the governor, Ron DeSantis. So it's definitely hate down here when it comes to the LGBTQ community. But why do you still think it's shunned upon in the Black community? Because like, we have underlying issues in the church, in the Black church. It goes all the way back to that. We have, they say like a lot of shows on TV now, there's always like a gay role. People are always complaining about that. But what's so wrong about it?
Well, first, I just want to say, I think it would just be really interesting because, Dwayne Wade is retired.
Yeah.
So that being said, he's no longer in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And his position, his voice it is a little different. And so I say that with respect that it'll be, it's interesting to know how different things would be if perhaps he was still an active player.
Yeah.
How would he be perceived by the team, by teammates,
Mm-hmm.
So I did just want to make that point. I'd be curious to know how drastic, things would be.
Mm-hmm.
But I this the Black community specifically
Mm-hmm.
and the LGBTQ, that's a topic that really we don't even have time to unfold.
I
But
know.
I'm just gonna be honest, it is because even with you, there was just so many things that I've heard growing up, whether it's true or not. Some things that I was taught, excuse me, um, that makes the topic so complex.
Yeah.
It really does. Um, because I remember growing up, I was even told that black slaves, and again, I don't mean to drift too far off topic, but I remember growing up, I was taught that, black male slaves,
Mhm.
in order to demasculate them, especially in front of, their families, their, black families, wives and children, that they were, raped by, white men or their masters. I'm not sure, how true this is. Again, this is just something I, was taught growing up. But even hearing that, like, I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, oh my God, like, okay,
Yeah.
so like you mean to tell me, like, in order to like strip down,
Mhm.
like not even a man, but a person's identity, in order to break them down, this is what was done to them. And it was done openly and publicly in front of, their family, their wives and children. Um, and even from the perspective of for a black son to see that from his father, and not saying that, and I'm coming from the point of harm,
Mhm.
because we all know if it was done, it was done in harm. It was done to hurt black people.
Yeah.
The image. Um, so it's that the black community and LGBT, that's just a topic that, it's just how do you unfold it? Because there's so many angles to where for so long black people has had this issue to where, they support something, but they don't support another, which doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
So like there's like, we've all heard like I don't want to go there, but we've heard black people say they'd rather have a certain family member be this. You rather have a son that's a murderer than a son that's gay. Or
Mhm.
you rather have a daughter that has many children by many men, and be a worker on the street than rather have a daughter that's a lesbian. We've heard those things
Yeah.
said about the black community before. So it's just the topic is so complex. It's so complex, but
Yeah.
Um, again, it's interesting because like you said, you don't really see white people coming at Dwayne Wade. You see more so black people, and maybe I just notice black people more because I'm black myself.
Right.
I pay attention to my community black news,
Right.
but like you said, but it's just it's really causing a divide in a way that isn't.
Yeah. Because like the thing is this, like, yes, we're gonna have to it goes deep, okay? But on the as far as Dwayne Wade and his child, people are like, oh, I'm unfollowing you, I'm unfollowing Wade, I'm no longer a Wade fan, and it's like, really? But you'll sit up here and watch. People love like Saucy Santana, right? Who doesn't love Saucy Santana, right? A lot of Black people love Saucy Santana, right? So why can't you also love Dwayne Wade, right? When you hear the rumors about Dwight Howard, um, dating trans women, so what about that? He's just now trying to get his career back up and running, you know what I'm saying? But it's like he doesn't get shunned for that as much as Wade is getting shunned for what he's doing. You know what I'm saying? It's like picking and choosing who you want to support, as an
I didn't even know. I mean, I heard about the Dwight Howard rumors,
Mhm.
but I didn't know. Like, I didn't know all of that, girl. I didn't.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah, I wasn't. I didn't know all of that. But maybe perhaps Dwayne Wade is bigger. So and then he's married to Gabby Union, who's a big star.
Mhm.
And not to say that Dwight Howard is important or he's not as big.
Right.
But Dwayne Wade and Gabby, they are a black power couple, within the black community. So, everything they do is highlighted, but it's it hurts, because ultimately, first and foremost,
Mhm.
Dwayne Child, Zaya, I believe,
Mhm.
Zaya Wade, Zaya's a human, you
Yeah.
know. So above all, you know, it hurts that Zaya is being treated the way, you know, they
especially by the Black community. We already
right.
have to deal with the
Well, I
sports
was gonna
side.
say it's so, you know, it's interesting because, you know, in in many ways, you know, Black people treat Zaya the same way white racist people treat Black people.
Hmm,
And I say that with the perspective of, you know, what you don't like being done to yourself, you're spewing onto someone else.
right.
And you know, I don't want to get too deep, but you know, it's like with the utmost respect, and you know what I mean when I say this as a Black woman,
Yeah.
Black people put on the white man's hat when it comes to Zaya and gay people.
Yeah. And I don't know why. And then some of them like to throw in religion. But what do they teach us? Don't talk about religion in the workplace. Don't talk about religion in this space. So it's like, yeah, you can throw the Bible in there. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to somebody like Megan Rapinoe, right? She's she's a lesbian. You know what I'm saying? Her and Sue Bird. But for them, they're glorified. You know what I'm saying? They are more glorified in the media than Dwayne Wade and his daughter. Why? Why? And I think that has a lot to do with us, unfortunately, because we need to be supporting each other, not tearing each other down, not
Well,
making
you know,
it.
it's so interesting that you say Megan and
Sue.
Megan Rapinoe and Sue, and I just said for 2 points because now I gotta say this.
Mhm.
In some way, I do see how Megan and Sue are kind of put on a higher pedestal than even people like Brittany Griner, because
Yeah,
Brittany Griner doesn't, but she's Black. Like, you know, there were a lot of things that I did. There were a lot of jokes being made about Brittany
right.
weren't made about Sue nor Megan.
Hmm.
And they did come from Black people too. And it made me think of this. From what I have experienced and seen,
Hmm.
Black people are much more quicker to support a lesbian over a gay person or a gay man. And I say that with the respect of one of the biggest arguments that I do know Black people do use is, you know, like the male leadership, you know, the
Okay.
the masculine the
Emasculating.
demasculating
Hmm.
the Black male.
Yeah.
Something that isn't done with any other racial group, but it's always done to the Black male. And I've even heard some people try to, you know, tie it back to how, you know, society, how the government took the Black male out of the home, you know, the house, but they
Yeah.
didn't do it with every other racial group. And so I use that with an example of, I've heard people say today that, you know, the modern day, you know, taking a Black man out of the house is, you know, using the LGBTQ
Yeah.
and trying to demasculate our males as a way to and this is just things that I've heard. But now again, like you said, Black people like Young Ma, the rapper Young Ma,
Hmm.
Whitey was coming for her in the same way. You know, Black people have came for, you know, Black gay men. It is, I will say, they are, Black people do seem quicker to support the women who are gay over male.
Yeah.
And then it even goes back to you know, like Dwayne Wade, and Zaya.
Hmm.
You know, people are so quick to you know, come at Zaya, you know, who's a child,
Hmm.
but they didn't have that same energy when it was, you know, the white counterparts or, you know, women like Brittany Griner.
Right.
It was a little bit more, it's from what I've seen, it was more of a harsher you know, come down on Domain.
For
And
sure. For sure. But he's going to be working towards that. He's working to he's fighting for, the rights. He's going to be supportive of that, and he's made that clear. So people need to chill out because he's not going to stop, obviously, and he has that support. Trust me. Magic Johnson goes through the same thing. He's not as vocal about it as Dwayne, but he's dealt with the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Like it's very present in our community. I just wish that we were more supportive for the male dominated sports as opposed to like the WNBA, you know, where it's like more expected, more accepted, and it's, you know, glamorized because it's two women, it's sexualized, you know, so it's a deeper conversation.
It is.
What we need to touch on is, you know, the fact that Deion Sanders is, you can't knock him for his mastermind of branding, for getting his coins, okay? Because that loss over the weekend where they got blown out, unfortunately, people were like preying on his downfall. And I was like, wow. And a lot of other people took notice too, that that's the vibes, you know, that of course we didn't think that he was gonna like come in with the undefeated season. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Everybody went in knowing that Oregon was gonna be the major first challenge. You know what I'm
Like,
saying?
first of all, Dan, Coach Dan, number one, no one expected Colorado to beat or come close to beating Oregon, who was ranked, you know, coming into the season. No one expected that.
Right.
Two, we also knew, Dan, you didn't have the same issue or you didn't have to rebuild your roster like Colorado did. So one, Deion doesn't have everything, you know, he doesn't have all the players, all the tools that he needs in order to compete maybe against like a USC or Oregon or Georgia, Ohio State. Eventually, like he said, he will get that. But no one expected him to win, you know? I think more than anything, people were just excited that Deion actually was changing the culture and turning around the Colorado program. And I think what kind of frustrated me was, you know, I saw a tweet which I agreed with, and it came from a guy named Kevin Powell who said the racism toward Deion Sanders is despicable.
Mm-hmm.
But we have seen this movie before. Certain kinds of folk have a huge problem with confident and visionary black males, including those in sports, be it Muhammad Ali or Michigan's Fab Five, same kind of haterism. And I definitely agree. And I see the point, every point in that tweet, because it's true.
Yeah.
When, you know, when a black male does present that that cocky confidence or that, you know, that, and again, this is sports.
Right.
No, you know, respectfully, you're not supposed to be humble in sports. You're not going to go into a competition, you know, thinking you're the worst. You're not going to do it. You know, I saw so many tweets saying, what is Deion supposed to do? Is he supposed to go into a competition against Oregon and say they're going to dog us, they're going to trash us? Do you think that TCU, who lost 65 to like 7 at the national championship game, do you think Coach Sonny went to his team and was like, okay, guys, they're going to ruin us, you know, just going and just have fun? No. Like, you're going to go in with the utmost confidence, even when you know you don't have it. So for even that little comment that Dan made, and I don't mean to go on a rant, but that comment that Dan made when he said, you know, we're fighting for this, we're not playing for clicks or Hollywood.
Yeah.
Sir, have that energy.
Right.
Have that energy if and or when you meet a team like Georgia.
Right.
Please keep that same energy when you meet our alma mater, Ohio State.
Right.
Be it this season or next year. Make sure you keep the same energy. Because that, for me, that was like that was like a bully tactic. Like, you're not gonna pick on someone your own size, so you're gonna pick on someone who's smaller. That's what that was for me. But again, like you know, we've seen it many times. People don't like that. I know we don't have much time to say, and I just gotta squeeze in this last point. Because we've even seen that about Sha'Carri.
Yeah.
Sha'Carri, when you think about it, Sha'Carri did not come against any other runner. Like, when you really, she never said anything bad about the Jamaican. She never said anything bad about her American kind of. She never said, "Oh, I'm the fastest." This girl isn't that. When you think, she never calls out anybody.
But let her have said something. Let her did make it a promotion, and the media would have loved that shit. You know what I mean?
But you know what though? The media still they still went to the party because all she did was just be confident, but they didn't like, you know, hear this black woman who's dominating. Who is they didn't like that energy. Had it been a white woman, and I hate to say, I don't think people would have, you know, made a big deal. Look at Caitlin Clark. You know, no one made a big deal when she was doing this to her competitor, when she was showing cocky confidence to her competitors. But with them, when Angel Reese stepped in, it became a problem. So we've seen this story with Black athletes, with Black men, Black women, and it's frustrating. But you know what, though?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get the last laugh as we always do.
Yes, and you know what? Shador did start a trend. Now you got other teams doing this. You know
Exactly.
what I'm saying?
Asking for pictures with him.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of benefits coming out of this. It's just that, unfortunately, the landscape, the system is almost still in a way built against us. So I'm glad we touched on these things today. I can't wait for next episode because Simone Biles recently had to stick up for a girl in Ireland for not receiving her medal, a Black girl. She's a gymnast as well, and it's like, yes, yes, athletes, keep speaking out, keep calling out these moments where we're not getting what we deserve, as far as the respect, as far as the credit that we deserve, for what we're doing, for how we're changing the world of sports, and how we are so talented on many different levels. I just know that golf is about to also, change as well, because we're tapping into that. We're multifaceted and multi-talented, and we're gonna make sure, at least me and you are, we're gonna make sure we give credit when it's due. You know what I'm saying? We just have to educate the others to understand that giving credit when it's deserved is important, and respect is important. So I'm glad everybody was able to tune in to watch me and Paris talk about these topics that most major sports networks don't, because again, it needs to be talked about. So thank you guys for joining Off the Field today. Stay tuned for next week's episode. Make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.